Instrumental Breakthroughs, psychedelic origin stories of your favorite creative superheroes. I'm your host, Daniel Shankin. I am the founder of Tam Psychedelic Integration. We offer integration coaching and support, educational events, and the like all over the world. We are the host of the upcoming Tam Integration Jam, which you can visit at psychedelicintegration.family. That's going to be a 3-day event celebrating all sorts of aspects, science and research and therapy and healing, all relating to psychedelic integration and preparation. I am very happy. Oh, I also do want to thank our host, Brian Markowitz of Deadheadland. Thank you so much for hosting us on your platform. Please visit deadheadland.com. Brian has live music and other events like this every day of the week, all day. And I would like to thank Skylar of Livestream Remote for doing all of our tech. You can visit livestreamremote.com for that. And our guest today, I'm very happy to be able to introduce our guest, Carey Thompson, right? Carey Thompson is a multidimensional visionary artist. He works in a variety of platforms. He's a highly skilled painter. He builds and fabricates enormous, beautiful structures. If you've been to transformational festivals, it's highly likely that you've walked through one of his gates. He was involved in the art scene at Burning Man. He is involved in the new Meow Wolf that's happening in Las Vegas, Omega Mart. Carey, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's a pleasure to see you again and to be here with you and connect with your audience.
Indeed. So, as I told you, the theme of the show is psychedelic origin stories of your favorite creative superheroes. And today you are that superhero. And so I'm wondering if you would, yes, we'll get into your exact superpowers later. But first I would like to know, where did this begin?
Well, my psychedelic origin story began, I would say definitely on my 16th birthday. It was my first acid trip growing up in Virginia, kind of in the suburban area outside of Richmond. And it was definitely a point in time where I could say it was, my life before and my life after. It was a major turning point for me, and it really awakened me to so much that had been dormant, unseen in my life, and it inspired me and encouraged me to continue that path. And from that point on, I was looking for it wherever I could. Let's see. The best stuff always seemed to come around when the Grateful Dead were coming through town. At the time, I was not a Deadhead, but we would definitely gather and hopefully score some good stuff around that time. And I was experimenting with mushrooms as well whenever I could. And I think the most profound thing that came out of that was just a deep reverence for nature. Something about my experiences when I was tripping would make me want to be out in the woods or look at clouds or all these things that seem to just come alive in that experience. So, whenever I could, I would try to get myself in a place that was beautiful in nature. Fortunately, there was enough of that around where I grew up that it wasn't years of having to go through, a party scene and get too mixed up in things that were distracting to the essence of what psychedelics were. So it was really powerful, and it wasn't for maybe a couple years after that I really started to integrate it into my art. It was something that's my origin for that was just wanting to create something that I would really enjoy observing and going deep with if I was on a hallucinogen. So that probably started off my psychedelic art career. I hadn't been exposed to any other visionary artists beyond, I guess, my influences at the time, like Salvador Dali and MC Escher. Those are some big ones that I really enjoyed, even previous to discovering psychedelics. But yeah, that was the beginning of my journey.
So were you drawing and painting back then too, 15, 16, 17 years old?
Yeah, I was. And
Mm-hmm.
I just took like art classes in school, you know. It was either that or, you know, you take music classes, but for me, I was more interested in drawing. So I've been doing that since I was a young kid, you know, like most kids. It wasn't until maybe around that time, 15, 16, that I started to try to develop my own style.
Right.
Working with cannabis for sure was a big aid in that. Helped me kind of loosen my mind a bit to just allow the creation to unfold on itself, sort of sidestepping the ego. And that was a big catalyst for me to be able to just open myself to whatever energies were around me, to sort of be a medium for that current to come through. You know, it's how I explain it now. It's you know, psychedelics. Well, a lot of people ask me if I, you know, take psychedelics and create in that space. And I never have. I mean, a couple of times I experimented early on, but for me, you know, I enjoy cannabis to open myself, but the psychedelics, essentially, I explain to others that they, you know, you receive a key in those journeys, and you have access to those places that you visit in those experiences later on, because you have that key to open those doors and those avenues. So you can access those realms and those dimensions because you have that set of keys that you receive during those journeys.
Right. I mean, that is something that a lot of people tend to say, is that it's hard to hold the brush. You know, it would be too hard to hold the brush, you know, in those states. And, you know, maybe a lot of people don't necessarily want to, you know, kind of plant medicine enthusiasts sometimes maybe don't want to admit that there's a little bit of an impairment that happens with certain things. But, you know, there's sometimes it's just best to lie back and collect the vision. One of the things that, Yeah,
well, I found myself getting completely obsessed in the detail of it. You know, that's what not being able to move beyond the minutia, and thinking something is just so fantastic in a square inch of space, and then, you know, the next day you look at it and you're like, this is trash. You know, so that's what I found myself just getting too lost in the detail in the moment, and you know, getting I guess distracted in that sense.
That's a really good point. I can relate with not with art necessarily, but with, you know, other things, getting really drilled down into, you know, a fractal piece of something that, you know, has no bearing on really anything in the grand scheme of things. But one of the things that you said was that you really felt like there was a before and an after, you know, of your 16th birthday. There's perhaps this kind of quantum leap or this transformation. I'm wondering if you would like to either tell us a little bit more about what that was, or if you would like to tell us about some other quantum leaps or before and after times that you feel like happened with your art.
Yeah, well, I would say, you know, I grew up not in any kind of religious household, so never went to church, didn't have that kind of upbringing. So I was really fascinated with science and understanding the world through that lens of science. So I grew up really believing that science was the answer, that ultimately things could get picked apart into their components and understood. And once things were broken down into smaller and smaller pieces and understood, then the whole would make sense. So, you know, my trajectory in school was math and science, and I felt, because I was interested in in these subjects and excelled at them, then I should, continue that trajectory and make a career out of it. I was conditioned by society and school and everything to do really good in school, so you can go to really good college, so you can get a degree, and then like get a good career, make a lot of money, and then find happiness along the way, right? That's kind of how it was for everyone. So that path continued, even going into the psychedelics era, after my 16th birthday and when I began experimenting with psychedelics. However, over time, over a few years of using psychedelics, I was having more and more experiences that just did not fall into that framework of reductionist, Newtonian Cartesian paradigm of thought, mind, and reality. And it got to a tipping point, I'd say, where something had to give, because no longer could I frame everything that I was experiencing in that same scientific worldview that I had been growing up with. And it was another tipping point was 2 weeks into my second semester at university. I was going in Chapel Hill and, pursuing medicine, science, physics and biology as a biology major. And it reached that critical point where something did give. And I just realized that there was a whole nother side to reality that could not be explained by science, this aspect of the spirit or energy or, whatever you want to call it. But there was too much synchronicity and magic and unexplainable phenomena that had been experienced through my usage and journeys of psychedelics that I had this cathartic epiphany where I was like, wow, I've got to shift things completely. I do have this fascination and passion for art, but now there's this whole other side that have been revealed to me through psychedelics that I really feel I need to embrace. So the next day I withdrew from college and decided that I was going to apply my passion for science and understanding the world through math and science and this whole world through my art. And through that, I can also incorporate and utilize this newfound passion for matters of the spirit and understanding the world through that lens. So I just realized that the two aspects of my life could be converged and applied to this new path in art. And it was super clear to me, clearer than anything. So that was the major turning point where I surrendered to that and had full confidence that I could put all my passions into one thing. And it didn't matter, if it resulted in financial wealth. That wasn't the point. I just realized that my whole life had been just going down this conveyor belt that had been created by this whole system that wasn't really my doing. So the psychedelics really helped illuminate the fact that I wasn't on my own path and that I needed to, restructure things and shift. So I started a whole new path where art was my life, and I haven't really looked back since.
See, now that makes, I didn't know this. I didn't know this about you. This makes so much sense based on looking at your art now. This definitely makes sense because you aren't creating things that are abstract, right? I mean, I look at your art and I see the geometry in it. And then obviously with these large scale installations and structure that you create, they stand up, right? They're freestanding. They obey the laws of physics. And so there has to be that level of detail and attention placed on how do we make this work in the world? Because, I mean, well, first thing, somebody could get hurt if it was put together sloppy or something like that, or it would never come to fruition. So, just the ability to kind of create a large scale installation the way that you do betrays um, a left brain, a functioning left brain, if
Mm-hmm.
nothing else. One of the other things that I kind of like about it, now that I'm kind of rattling it around, is, there's definitely kind of sacred geometry I see in your work, but I don't see a lot of kind of the templates, if like the I don't see the low hanging fruit of sacred geometry. It's not that I don't look at your art and it's not just, oh well, there's Metatron's cube, or there's the flower of life, or there's these things that are almost like um clip art, like like there's no sacred geometry clip art in there. It's just like you took those principles and then evolve them into your own work as well. So we have kind of an evolution of, I see the evolution of both, of physics and engineering, and then also of sacred science. Can you want to
Yeah,
elaborate on that?
it's really interesting that you bring that up, because you see proliferating all through visionary art a lot of these sacred geometric symbols, and for me that exemplifies lack of understanding of sacred geometry. That was more of a fad that emerged through a lot of psychedelic and visionary art, because there was this new study of sacred geometry, and there were some books written about it, and so many people were fascinated by it, and they had an idea of what it meant, but so many artists just, yeah, like you said, it's a low-hanging fruit. You throw a flower of life in there and suddenly it's visionary. But sacred geometry was something that took me years of study and actual tangible work with it to really grok its meaning. I stumbled into it early on. There was a piece I did when I was 19 that one of my first visionary art pieces, and I started it by using my compass and intersecting two circles and making the foundation of sacred geometry, which is the Vesica Pisces. And for me, it was years before I ever heard of the term. It was just a way for me to create a template to build symmetry upon, because I was really into seeing bilateral symmetry in nature, and that was something that I wanted to create a piece with. So it was really just to create reference points on the left and right side of the picture using these circles. And I bisected the axis, the vertical and horizontal axis, and that was my starting point. And what emerged from that was this beautiful creation that astounded me, and was like beyond anything I had done at that point. So I was like, wow, there's something to this, So I continued to experiment with this and my ruler, making these templates, like these skeletons that I would then sculpt the painting upon. And it was a few years later, I was traveling in New Mexico, and I met somebody that kind of recognized something in my work, and she took me to a sacred geometry workshop in Boulder. And this is in '97, I think, and I had never even heard the term. So then suddenly I'm just, deep in all these people that have been researching and doing different aspects of sacred geometry in their work, and realized that it's like this big thing. And at that point, I had already discovered the flower of life just by playing with my compass and using them as templates to sculpt my paintings upon. And then through continued work with these as templates, and then coupled with understanding and learning about different other people's research, not other artists, but more geometers and mathematicians and people that were working on sacred geometry and how it relates to different aspects of nature and chemistry and things like that. And I already had chemistry in my background, and I understood how molecular bonds were formed. And obviously you can see the geometry in nature with spiral shells and certain plants and flowers and things. So I was doing pieces that, there's a piece I did in '98 called Omnicentricity that I started with a seed of life, and found all the things that wanted to coalesce upon that geometry. That's like crystals, honeycombs, stargazer lily, and even got into megalithic forms. I realized Stonehenge fits into that. So all these things just crystallized onto this template of sacred geometry, and that brought on the understanding that it's the language of nature. Like nature utilizes these geometries to structure its forms in the plant life and the mineral world and all these things. So I realized that underlying all things is this sacred geometrical dimension that is unseen. So I thought that it was important to continue to keep that unseen in my work instead of like making it obvious. So that piece I did in 97, using the seed of life, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it apparent that there's a seed of life in here. So I depicted it subtly, but made it, obvious that it was in there. And I was like, I knew then that I was going to stop ever putting it obviously in my pieces. I didn't want to ever have a flower of life or seed of life in it. And I knew that it was going to start becoming this popularized trend in art because I knew how powerful it was. And I totally predicted that because it's, everywhere. You see it and it's just like, I'm glad I made that call because it's on
my kombucha bottle.
Exactly. It's very marketable. But I thought, the deeper meaning of sacred geometry is that it's in everything and it's unseen. If you can understand the true nature of it and realize how it connects a plant to a crystal, to a galaxy, that all these things are connected inherently through this unseen dimension of geometry. That's the true power in it, of understanding how it connects everything and reveals the interconnectivity of all things. That's the true essence and power of sacred geometry, which easily gets lost when it's just thrown in your face as a symbol, without understanding. So I wanted that message to be hidden in my art, and it continues this day where I use these templates as a way of connecting to that source current of creativity that exists everywhere. It's basically retranslating that same current in nature that it employs to make plants and trees, like minerals and crystals, and everything that you see has to get moved through these filters of geometry. So that's one of the paramount messages in my work, is that inherent underneath all the pieces is this geometry that exists everywhere, and you can't not resonate with an artwork that is born from sacred geometry, because we are born from sacred geometry. So there's this inherent resonance that you have with something that is sculpted upon the geometric forms. And I feel that resonance is important for art and artists to connect with people, and for them to feel this connection and this familiarity with an art piece. And that allows them to take it in and absorb it. And the intention that you put into a piece can really penetrate through those veiling walls of the ego and the self by that level of deeper resonance that the sacred geometry allows to occur. So I think it's an often lost message that people confuse sacred geometry with just the surface level of the symbols and the design.
Right. Just I'm wearing a necklace that has a flower of life on it, so we're friends.
Yeah.
I'm part of the tribe because I have the thing. Well, what I liked that you said earlier, and you said it just now, you were talking about cannabis helping to kind of relax the ego, and you were talking about the resonance of sacred geometry relaxing the ego, and allowing us to be more like ourselves. And so I'm really liking this idea of, people do a lot of work on themselves to try and peel away the layers of conditioning and muck and, programming and trauma. And people are, using their yoga and their meditation, and they're using psychedelics and things like that. But what you're proposing is that just sitting with a piece of art that was intentionally created can, by resonating our deeper nature, help to perhaps let some of that stuff go so that we can be more ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, that you could say is the primary intention of my art, is to reveal that interconnectivity that is lost because of, like you said, all the trauma, all the muck that is the result of living in discordance with that current that exists everywhere. It's really easy to derail oneself off their true path or their role in the collective of life and consciousness. It's very easy to, and our society is built upon that. There seems to be this this drive to keep us separated. So we continue to be automatons that work to feed up the levels of prosperity to those that are benefiting from that. There is a lot of pressure for people to not discover their true nature, to not find their passions in life. Society seems to be really pushing people towards consumerism, towards just finding something to make money so they can buy things and go into credit debt and school debt and all this stuff that essentially just makes you a worker bee for society. And I feel that the most important thing we could be doing as a species is to rediscover our interconnectivity with all biological, planetary, and universal realities, just to be, as they say, as a cliche, one with everything. But I think that's our true nature, as in all other animals and plants, that's all just part of this one organism. Humans are unique in the sense that we've deviated from that natural path, where there is a disharmony with our species with the rest of the planetary systems. And I think that's obvious for people to see. So our one shot, I think, that we have in this game of life is to reorient ourselves with that current that exists everywhere, to reconnect with our ability to see ourselves as interconnected, interdependent whole. So yes, psychedelics are important, meditation's important, all these things are important, but we need all the catalysts that we can have. So for me, I realized that art is a powerful medium to help establish that sense of harmony. And sacred geometry is a huge key in that, because it is harmony, it connects everything. So having these underlying frameworks and templates of sacred geometry creates the avenue for that awareness of interconnectivity to be transmitted from the artwork to the person. And hopefully the intention is to spark some level of recognition and awareness and connection to something greater than themselves, to realize that, oh, I recognize this. There's some familiarity here. Oh, I'm not alone. There's something to this that is triggering something deep within me, something that's like deep and cellular, that where the transformation needs to occur initially. The individual is where it begins. Without that inspirational spark, then it's really hard to get to that point where your behaviors shift and your ideas shift and your consciousness shifts. There has to be something that triggers you deeply to inspire that sense of oneness and connectivity to all things. So for me, like, art is something that can transcend the mind, because it's visual, because you can take it all in as one uniform thing. All that intention, all that time and love that gets put into something can get right through all those layers of muck and confusion and hit deep, like good music and any form of good art. There's something to it that hits that spot and strikes that chord of inspiration, which then expands out into the rest of your being. And that's when you start to make different choices and shift your behavior. And then that hopefully inspires you to seek your own source of passion and inspiration. And through that, you communicate that to others in your life. So the whole idea is to instigate and begin this snowballing effect of inspiration by transmitting this sense, this intention of global unity and universal unity through the art, and in the hopes that will inspire them to then inspire others and others and others. And eventually the idea is that we as a collective species are now in harmony with each other and with the planet, and then the healing can begin at that point on a large scale. But until that critical mass of individuals have attained that level of awareness of the interconnectivity of all things, then we're still gonna be just delayed and continue to have these issues where we're not seeing the planet as part of ourselves. We're not seeing each other as a reflection of ourselves. So we're behaving in this space of disconnection, which is where fear begins. And then, but from that point, it just gets messy, because there's this great divide.
I wonder if it's not a catch-22 though. I mean, I'm glad that you bring up, bringing your behaviors into alignment. That's important. And you also bring up the need for inspiration, because we do sometimes know that it is hard to bring our behaviors into alignment and make different choices when we're so conditioned and so patterned. I am just, what is your thoughts or advice for people who might be listening as to how to sort of bring both of these up, increase, behaviors that are going to bring us into alignment with global unity, as you say, and harmony with ourselves and all things. And then how do we stay inspired in order to continue to have the fuel to maintain those behaviors, because sometimes they don't bear fruit right away. In my integration work with people, they come off of, these very peak experiences, and they're going to make tons and tons of changes in their lives. And they're able to maintain those changes for 2 or 3 months. And then they start to drop off, and life kind of slowly starts to get back to normal. And they're worried they did something wrong. And, sort of staying on that trajectory is awfully challenging. So
you're right, and now more than ever, I never thought society would be in such a divided place as it is right now. It's right now it's as hard as it's ever been to be excited, to think that making the changes are going to have an effect, and not being completely submerged by the deluge of division that the media and society and politics and everything that's being forced upon us in a sense. So I get it. It's really difficult to integrate the experiences and to have them form a lasting change in your life. I was very, very fortunate when I had my epiphany in life that I had this background of art to apply my experiences to. It was just a turnkey thing for me, where okay, well, great, now I know what I need to do. I'm going to continue to make art, and all this stuff is going to go right into that, and it makes perfect sense. But not having that background in art, I think I would be very confused as to how do I apply this? What is it that I'm here for? What should I do with this knowledge or awareness? And how can I, continue to make it last? And, I wish I had a very clear answer for everybody, because, I truly believe that everybody is brought into this world with some gift or something that they're passionate about. And for some it's farming, for some it's art, for some it's music, for some it's computers. It runs the whole spectrum. I'm sure that everybody has something that they are passionate about and they don't feel is work. And it's everybody's challenge to discover that. And it's especially challenging when society and the educational system pulls you into this path that throws all these other things in your path and doesn't really necessarily create the nurturing environment for you to try new things and discover new things. But I am seeing more opportunities emerge today, especially with the you said the transformational festival reality, where a lot of opportunities are being given in these formats for people to come and volunteer and plug into various things. And in these festivals, you have artists and designers and musicians and builders and permaculturalists and the whole spectrum of things that are incorporated into these festivals that create a fertile ground for discovery. So seeing that build and more emerge, I mean, this last year not included, was wonderful, because a lot of people were getting to step outside of what it was that they had been conditioned to be doing for so long and try new things. Because I think that's tantamount to this discovery, is just stepping outside of what you've been doing your whole life and trying new things. If you haven't been fortunate enough to discover something that really excites you, then you really just gotta try other things. It's trial and error, I guess, because until you find that one thing that you're like absolutely sure that you love, then you're going to have this level of discontent. And that is just indicative of needing to start anew and try something else. And I think reading different subjects is a really good thing to help, and just being really open. But I don't think there's one answer that works for everybody, unfortunately. But I do strongly believe that everybody has something that they can find in their lives that they're passionately excited about. And when you find that and you pursue it, then I also firmly believe that life works out. There's a reciprocity between one putting love and energy into their passion with the universe, supporting it in some weird and mysterious way. So until people form a relationship with that feedback between themselves and the universe through applying their passion into something, then it is difficult to stay inspired, to continue to push through until you get to that point where it's just regenerating itself and creating something where it's supporting you and you have the livelihood of your dreams. So, I do have faith that everybody can find that.
Right. So you use the term, pursue your passion. And well, I like this, and I want to be very explicit about it, because there's a difference between pursuing your passion and pursuing your passion. And when I hear somebody like you say that, it's like one of the reasons that I like having the artists and the musicians on the podcast is not just I appreciate your talent, but I appreciate like the dedication and the diligence and the discipline, the 3 Ds, that go into creating phenomenal works of art and music. And, you know, it's not lost on me that, you know, many hours get spent cultivating a skill. And I think that, you know, this is really key for people having psychedelic initiations, is that there is a vision of a potential future, right? It's like, oh, this can be like this, and this is going to be amazing, and I see the potential here. And then there's sort of like the pursuit that you discussed that is like um, quite a bit of work, you know, and just to sort of have a vision and expect it to manifest instantly. I mean, maybe that's possible for some people, but I see it, that it's much more often the case that people have a vision and then they're like the shoulder has to go to the wheel, and it's a real kind of labor of love to bring that to fruition.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and it's that love that gets you through those early phases of challenge. You know, it only takes one minuscule breakthrough to get you through to the next breakthrough. So it's just a series of uncovering these breakthroughs that you have with anything where you're like, oh, whoa, I can do this. You know, I might not be the best at it, but it's something I like. And whoa, that's awesome. Like I did this. And that should be the, you know, the inspiration or the impetus to get you through the next challenge to the next breakthrough. So
Mm-hmm.
it you know, the smallest achievement I feel can unlock a lot of power, and it's just a matter of having a lot of faith and confidence that it's going to be worth it in the end, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
it's really easy to succumb to the self-defeating ideas that I'm not good at this, I've waited too long, I'm too old to get started into this. You know, what's the point? You know, it's just going to be, you know, be a futile effort that's not going to amount to anything. Those voices we all have, and it becomes easier and easier to listen to those voices the further along that deviated path we are. You know, the more stuff we've accrued in life, the more, you know, like credit, the debt, the years spent at the job, you know, all these things make it really hard to shift one's trajectory the longer that we've, you know, been along that path that's deviated from it. So I get it. It's a huge challenge. But I think it's something that hopefully we can all overcome in order
Mm-hmm.
to get to that place of happiness, which I feel is greatly in part to feeling this sense of something larger than ourselves that we're connecting with. And you don't need to really give that a name or anything. There's just something that's there that reminds us that we're part of something much bigger, which I feel does create this state of fulfillment, this sense of you know, belonging to something that's important for happiness.
This might be a little off topic, but you know, you mentioned the negative voices in our heads. And I was just talking to somebody a day or two ago, and I've been trying to work with this. I find it fascinating that they suggested that the voices in your head that are yelling at you and telling you you're not good enough and you can't do it aren't actually inside your head. If you listen, you can place them. That they're either is the voice coming from above or below, forward or back, or left or right, and that you can actually start to relate to some of those voices differently and to discover that that's not actually your essential nature by figuring out where they're coming from. And you can dialogue with them differently, because what they say is that you know, the programming, he suggested that a lot of them are coming from above because you were little, you were a little person, and that people were telling you no, and it was coming in from up here. And he was like, well, you can turn it down, you can rewind it, you can rewrite it, And it's sort of like, so the Tim Leary talked about, or Robert Anton Wilson talked about meta programming, how to kind of rewrite those scripts. And, it's one of the things that I like to do in psychedelic spaces is find, the part of me that is intent on beating up the other parts of me and convincing them to play nicely. And that just adds another dimension to it. I don't know if you have any thoughts, any further thoughts on that.
No, I haven't really thought about that before, but it does make sense. It's they're probably not in our head; they're outside voices. So,
So the other thing that you said, I might not be the best at this, when you were talking, but here I am doing it. And, in a lot of ways, I look at your art and it's not necessarily, it's kind of like, what the Grateful Dead said. It's not necessarily that you're the best at what you do. You're kind of the only person who does what you do. I look at your, at some point, it seems like you transitioned from painting, and I'm guessing you probably still paint, but you started creating these kind of objects. You started creating these kind of three-dimensional objects that, mix geometry, and there's a level of, technology in there with colored lights that are sometimes programmable. And, they're in various sizes. I remember when you just had these little portals that were little, and then there were, started to be these enormous things at festivals. And now you have a room at Meow Wolf in Las Vegas. Will you speak to this evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, earlier we were talking about how through my art and drawing and painting, I stumbled into sacred geometry, and along that path, I started to uncover how it's a lost art. It was something that was incorporated with a lot of Renaissance art, painting, and also obviously architecture. And sacred architecture was something that I started to study and research and learn about. From the pyramids of Egypt to the Mayan temples to the temples in India, all over the world, you have this knowledge, this awareness crystallized in the stone, in the temples, in the megalithic structures. So there's this knowledge that's embedded and forever immortalized in these standing structures that have been on the planet for a long time. So I was fascinated by that as to how that stopped, or at least like shifted greatly, where there didn't seem to be enough fascination with these principles of sacred geometry to incorporate it into our buildings. So it really made me think that perhaps there's this ebb and flow of consciousness that happens on Earth, where there's periods of time where we are connected and in harmony and building these structures that are based off natural patterns and language. And then there's periods where we're deviated and we're in these dark ages where we've lost that connection. So it, for me, feels that, in the large cycles of time, that we are re-emerging into this period, that we are understanding and becoming to realize that there is this hidden language in everything that exists. And that's why I think you're starting to see a lot of it in visionary art and these structures. So I'm just trying to do my part in bringing about this reawakening of something that I feel has been lost. That's always there, but it's just we forget, collectively for periods of time. So I felt that because I was passionate and excited about learning about sacred architecture from ancient structures and things like that, that I wanted to try and see what would happen if I actually made things that applied those same principles that I was incorporating into my paintings, into physical structures, for that same intention that I mentioned earlier, of establishing a resonance, like the resonance that was the concept when you would step into a large cathedral or mosque that is based off these same principles of geometry for the purpose of exalting the people within to connect with God, to connect with something much greater and bigger. So I felt there was a lot of power in a physical manifestation of crystallized geometry in establishing a much deeper connection and resonance with these natural principles that exist everywhere. So that's when I started that journey. And it's just grown from there, really just wanting to create immersive and interactive spaces with that same intention that I wove into my paintings, into physical structures that you could enter and interact with and be inside, and then also fusing in the technology, because I think technology has a big part to play in all this, that it could be, used for good or bad. And I think making structures that incorporate psychedelic technology that further stimulates the senses and creates a deeper sense of wow and awe, through the interaction of the technology with the lights and the projections and the music incorporated into it, and bringing in all the factors like doing stage design is really cool because it's creating this like monumental architectural piece, but then it brings in the musicians and the visual, the VJs to do projections, and then the LEDs and the lasers, and then you bring in the crowd, and you have all these elements that are there with everything that is designed to propel your senses into a state of bliss that there's just no escaping the art and the beauty that is immersed in everything, and all your senses are activated, and that's just like you're getting hit from all sides, and there's very little way to escape the inspiration at that point, and to feel the power and the love. So the getting into 3D structural stuff has opened up a lot of opportunity for collaboration, and to take my art to a whole nother level through the synergy of working with others and bringing in new elements and just trying to pioneer new territory. I felt at one point that, all these visionary artists were emerging in the 2D spectrum, that I felt like, okay, I'm gonna let these guys handle this and get into something different, and see. I just felt the.
That's kind of how I feel about yoga classes, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't mean to interrupt. Please continue.
Oh no, that was it basically. Just I saw a need, and I felt that nobody was filling it. I was really inspired by portals, these structures with the intention to designate some level of sacred space, and this idea of walking through this liminal membrane from one dimension to another. And I have continued to push that in my work of creating these portals. So everything I attempt to do is essentially trying to bridge our dimension with the dimension that normally lies unseen. And getting back to psychedelics, that's essentially the dimension that I hope to reveal through all the work that I do. I feel that there's something really big out there that's starting to really seep through our noosphere, our plane of existence. And for the longest time, it's just been this trickle of light that's coming through, this crack in the dam that's been established by society and all the systems that are in place that have wanted to hold it back, because it's it's fearful for its continued existence. So this light that's been like trickling through is now starting to trickle a lot more, a sense that crack in the dam is growing ever increasingly large. And now there's just more and more of this light that's pouring through this hole in the wall. And fortunately, in this metaphor, which I feel is appropriate for what's happening, is that you don't have to dismantle that dam brick by brick to break it down. You really just need to feed that trickle, that crack, to get it to the point where it's at that critical point where it can no longer structurally hold itself, and then blast open, and then you just have all this light pouring through that has nothing in its way. So I feel we're doing that by everything that we do to feed that psychedelic leak that's coming through, and whether it's art or podcasts or anything that's educational, essentially what we're trying to do is just blow this psychedelic reality through the roof, because now is the most important time than we've ever had to. It's almost like this new wave of psychedelic mainstreaming is our last shot, because we all know how important it is and how crucial it is for us to turn the page on this long period of darkness and heaviness. So I think it's important that we attack it on all fronts, because it's almost like our last chance at this.
Right. And when you're talking about this, this attacking at all fronts, I can't help but, turn it to the individual, right? Because on one hand, you're also talking about, this very intentionally created stage and performance, right? Where all of the senses are kind of overwhelmed with kind of the light and the design and the art and things like that. And, it just sort of makes me, aware that, my body as an interface to reality just takes things in through the senses. It's like everything that my direct experience is through the five senses. And then I happen to think whatever I think about it based on whoever I happen to be at the given moment. And so the cultivation of my space, this is why in psychedelics they talk about set and setting being so important. Is like, how am I cultivating my space for the psychedelic journey that I'm on in just my ordinary, quote unquote, ordinary waking life, or in something that has been alternate and non-ordinary. It's like, how do I continue to kind of evolve that with beauty that I know is going to make a difference to my consciousness? Right. So I'm very, very, I happen to be very impressionable, and I feel like we all are. And if we're just constantly stuck in the same old kind of boring, small environments, we're going to have the same old boring, small thoughts. And if we sort of work together to create something grander, then we're going to have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Creating that set and setting for ourselves in those journey spaces is absolutely important, and extending that to communities and societies and large gatherings. That's
right. Exactly. You've just gone pro. You've gone pro set. You're pro set and setting.
Yeah, I'm a set and setter professional.
But that's on your cards, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So speaking of collaboration and amazing set and setting, can we talk about Meow Wolf for a minute?
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, I mean, I've been to the one in Santa Fe, and I tried not to look for a minute, like at the one in Vegas. I was like, oh, maybe I want it to be a surprise, but I couldn't help it. And I'm looking at it, and I can't wait.
Yeah. I mean, it's phenomenal. It was 3 years in the making. So for those 3 3 years, I was focused on my part of it, because I really didn't have a briefing as to what was all happening. So, I was, purposefully, but, also I thought I'm just going to do what I'm doing and wait and see. So there was a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement, the longest project that has ever been done by me that, for so long. There was a lot of build up to it. So when I finally got to go there for the opening, I was, blown away, not only to see my piece finally for the first time in its home, because I did the actual installation remotely. I did the fabrication there in Vegas, but I didn't actually go into the building to set it up. I did that remotely with a camera from
Oh wow,
Costa
what was
Rica.
That sounds tricky.
Yeah, well, I had enough experience doing these types of things where I could send a pretty detailed map and instructions as far as the sequence of things, of how they need to be connected and where it should go. And I had all the 3D models and everything.
Right, because you've got that left brain working for you.
Yeah. But it was helpful to have a camera in there that I could move around from my computer and see what was going on. If anything looked off or anything that I felt that they were getting to that needed, to be described in greater detail. But the contractors that they had were phenomenal. They worked amazingly and asked all the right questions and knew what they were doing and had way more experience than I did with these kinds of things. So it was amazing. It worked out really well. So it's got me more excited to do things that I couldn't normally do by this idea of designing and building remotely in locations all over. But my biggest takeaway from experiencing Meow Wolf Mega Mart for the first time was this really renewed sense of hope that if places like this can successfully open and exist, then wow, like we're really doing it, because it is essentially a psychedelic factory of experiences that are bringing together so many amazing visionaries all in one place. So it's an experiment in synergy that's never been created before that I know of, and I'm pretty sure that's true, because it's a large space and it's exceptionally curated. There's no sense of disconnection from one exhibit to another. It's really cohesive. One space segues perfectly into the other. So the level of intention and design and scale of it is like nothing I've ever experienced. So to see the effect it had on people, especially people that might not have been formally exposed to like Burning Man or some of these festivals where you have these large scale immersive artworks. But being in Vegas, it was designed, I think, for that level of wow factor that Vegas has, where all the cutting edge technologies are incorporated, the projection mapping, the interactivity, the musical lasers. Alex Gray's room is just incredible. It's such a simple concept, but with his art and the way that they've created to be completely surrounded and immersed in the infinite in that space with the music, and you hear samples of his voice coming through, and it's just phenomenal, and it's just you wouldn't even know it was there. It looks like you're going into like a conference room in an office, and you open the door and boom, you're in there, and it just stretches to infinity with the way the mirrors work in there. So man, it was really cool just to see everybody's reaction and just to know that this place is going to be there for a long time, and how many people are going to get exposed to it, and what that's going to do to their basically raising the ceiling of what people thought was possible. And I think that has a great effect on people, where just amazed, and they're like, wow, I can't believe this is possible, and that they even like would even do something like this, you know, because it's really like
Right.
you're going into this like, you know, first person, real life, not virtual video game, you know, and
Right.
it's just amazing. So I hope that it's super successful and that like the model gets replicated more and more and more all across the world, because I think that is indicative of a healing planet.
Well, that would be nice, especially because so many of the things that we took for granted as needing to be brick and mortar, it's becoming more and more obvious that it's not. Like, you know, there's so much real estate that doesn't need to be used. And, you know, whether that gets turned into farms, I mean, farms would be nice, or whether it gets turned into more meow wolves. You know, I think that, you know, there's certainly better things we can do with the spaces in our planets than just make them all banks.
Yeah. Imagine every shopping mall that has been like abandoned turns into these interactive psychedelic theme parks. You know, how
Mm-hmm.
many of those are in every town? Anywhere, any town USA could suddenly become a nexus for the psychedelic experience. You know, because shopping malls are something that I feel are going to be a relic of our past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then also, you know, there's people talking about, there's a lot of medicalization around psychedelics right now, because, you know, medicalization is nice because you can still do psychedelics and pretend like you're not having a good time. You know, you can pretend like it's all, oh, this is for trauma, this is for healing. God forbid somebody enjoy themselves. But, you know, I think Leary posited that, you know, there should be these sanctuary spaces where there were trained professionals, you know, who could guide you on psychedelic journeys, even if you're a well person. You know, I don't think medicalization even occurred to him. You know, it was more akin to something like um, parachuting, you know, or hang gliding or something like that, where, you know, you wanted to have this, you know, fun, wild, out there experience. And well, okay, you need a guide, you need an expert, you need a good place, you need a galactivation portal, and off you go. And I mean, that certainly seems like a better use of a JC Penney's than JC Penney's.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I would love to see that happen, and hopefully, Omega Mart is a harbinger of many more to come, just like it. You know.
Indeed. Is there any, what are you working on? Is there anything you're working on currently? Is there anything you want us to know about or check out as we sort of wind down our hour?
There's a few things that I'm considering. You know, I did mention the shop there also in Vegas where we met. Well, not the one
Right.
in Vegas, but you know, doing a storefront could be cool. That's one option. I was contacted recently by somebody that wants something for their property in Austin and Sedona, and they're really into like psychedelics and incorporating that. So I was thinking it would be cool to start making something that could involve somebody going inside of a thing and incorporating a acoustical space where their voice could be amplified through parabolic reflectors, and their voice then activating the LEDs. So there was the interaction between the voice and the lighting. So you would have the experience within this, you know, inner sanctum, where you could, you know, have that journey within there, but also you would be creating the exterior journey for other people that were there to observe it. So just playing
Very
around
cool.
with ideas, with more levels of interactivity, and you know, still plugging away at my land here in Costa Rica. I mean, that's definitely always there. So it's been nice to come back to finish up that project in Vegas from Meow Wolf, and come back
Mm-hmm.
just working with the plants and the land and reconnecting with the
Gorgeous.
earth and spending time with my family and surfing. So right now I'm sort of in this, in between jobs, I guess, because I haven't
Right.
really bit into anything quite yet. That's like a big project, but a few things are on the periphery. But in the meantime, I'm just really enjoying plugging away at my land.
Right.
I'm helping my wife open up her apothecary and herbal tea
Cool.
house. So
Oh,
that's
more
been a
plant
fun
medicine.
thing.
Love it.
Yeah. So she's super passionate about the herbs and the plants, and it's really cool that a place like that's going to open here. There's nothing like it. So I feel it's going to be a really cool hub for the community that's into plant medicine and things like that.
It's awesome. I love a good tea house.
Yeah.
And I do want to give a shout out to, jaminon.com, our friends where we met. They have a shop in Vegas and they make tie-dyes and other, kind of wonderful other, they turn your body into set and setting.
Yeah. Doing good
It's
things
really
for
nice.
many decades.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you're just inspiring me. I should open up a savings account so that maybe I can bring you in for my son's bar mitzvah. We'll create we got 13 years, or we got 12 years.
Okay.
We got some time to plan it, but
You're still
maybe,
a little sprout then.
yes, but maybe we'll create some sort of initiation portal for that.
Yeah, that's a big one.
How do people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, one way is they can reach me through Instagram.
Okay.
My handle is Carey Thompson _ galactivation. My email, Carey, CAREY 2012 @gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way to reach me. My Facebook page, Galactivation, is another.
Fantastic.
So, Instagram, I keep up more comprehensive.
Got it. That's the one you're glued to.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah. Any last messages of healing and hope for our listeners? Any kind of things on the tip of your tongue or messages you want to get out there before we part ways again?
Yeah, I'd say, I think what's been really successful for me is really heeding the messages and the insights I've gleaned from the psychedelic experience. I think a lot of people go into these journeys and have these amazing experiences and come out of it with a lot of inspiration, ideas, new beliefs. But a lot of them don't put much stock into it because they think it was, just a trip, just something that was the result of their night of hallucinating. But I think it's really important to really drive in the fact that those experiences are real and to really follow through with those things that you experienced and the insights that you had. For me, it's been very successful, just really believing in them and not having doubts. And sure, the doubts come, but really just trusting that what comes from your experience is real. And it's important to follow through and integrate and believe and to continue to believe beyond just the afterglow, that it's something that is really valuable and really worth putting the time and energy and doing whatever restructuring you need to do to follow through and to adhere to the new you that has been revealed through your experience. I think too many people either forget about it or succumb to their doubts or are afraid to make the changes. But I really hope that more people can have the confidence and take the leaps of faith that are necessary, because the universe greatly and well to those leaps of faith that are in line with the experiences that
Gorgeous. Thank you so much. I'll do like a couple of closing show notes, and then we'll say hi to Skylar again.
Okay.
Thank you everybody for being a part of Instrumental Breakthroughs today with Carrie Thompson. Thank you so much, and visit him on Instagram at Carey Thompson _galactivation. Big shout out again to Deadheadland for hosting us. Please support them on Patreon at patreon.com/deadheadland. And thank you to Skylar at livestreamremote.com. I am your deeply devoted host, Daniel Shankin of Tam Integration. And thank you for being here. Really, really appreciate your kind patience and attention. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much. Have a great day.